Hello, everyone. This is Dora Smith, and you're listening to Engineering the Future Workforce by Siemens. On this podcast, we explore emerging and best practices that are empowering the next generation of talent. The series showcases conversations with leading voices from academia and industry who are committed to improving learners' digital skill set and mindset to accelerate innovation. Subscribe wherever you do podcasts.
While self-directed study is becoming more commonplace inside and outside of educational institutions, learners are often more successful when they're provided or discover their own roadmap that helps them navigate their journey and understand the intrinsic value of their educational pursuits. In this episode, we'll examine the importance of credentials and how they can motivate learners to stay the course with two of our very special guests from our Siemens ecosystem, Hani and Sophie. We're honored to have you both as guests on Engineering the Future Workforce. Hey, to start, could you please tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, and your current role?
Sure. I'll start us off. So I am a learning consultant here at Siemens Digital Industry Software. And on the side, I am also an entrepreneur. I have a bachelor's of science from the University of Michigan in mechanical engineering. And overall, I'd say my professional journey is focused on technical communication and teaching the next generation of the workforce. Some of my experience includes creating custom learning content as well as teaching it, with a focus in product lifecycle management. If you're familiar with our Siemens software, I specifically work in Teamcenter and Active Workspace. So some of the things that I've had a chance to do is actually last month, I was able to customize and teach our Active Workspace Foundation course. And some other projects that I have assisted with include creating a smart manufacturing mini course for Penn State, as well as assisting teaching in additional product lifecycle management courses and creating content and presentations for our services leadership development program here at Siemens. During my internships here, I was able to lead a presentation tool about branding. So I've dipped my toe in the marketing side of things. And I've also had a chance to contribute to global conferences and outreach. So I was a part of a STEM camp for middle school girls, which was really awesome. So, transitioning over to the entrepreneur side, I own a dog sitting service that I started about a year ago. And with the help of my roommate, AKA my consultant, we have achieved over $13,000 in revenue. A little bit more specific to the topic that we're discussing today, I have lots of different types of certifications that have helped me get to where I am today. These include 12 Siemens certifications from Accelerator Academy, as well as certifications in NX, Mendix, and 6 NASA certifications. Overall, I'd say my journey is that I'm committed to continuous learning and sharing that with others.
Sophie, I think we have a lot of interns we work with and student ambassadors around the world that would really, they're going to learn a lot from you this episode,
I'm
because
excited.
that's a tremendous background of how you leverage things through your university into the professional world and seeing that continuous role within Siemens. Thank you so much for sharing all of that. So
Thank you.
I can't wait for this discussion. Hani, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Certainly. Thank you for having us, first off. But I'm Hani, and I'm currently an advanced technical product manager at Siemens Digital Industry Software. Currently, I'm the product owner of NXX Manufacturing, which is our SaaS transformation of our on-premise software called NXCAM. I started my journey at Siemens of January of 2022 being a software engineer for our digital manufacturing CAM software. And throughout the time, expanding my skill set with go-to-market plans, marketing in general, pricing and packaging. I was able to learn a lot through my mentors here at Siemens, and that's what brought me today to be a technical product manager. My studies included studying at Wayne State University. I hold a bachelor's degree in biomedical engineering, and I hold a master's degree in computer science with a concentration in artificial intelligence. And now I'm currently working on my MBA with a specialization in finance at Louisiana State University. During my time at Wayne State, I was fortunate enough to be a student assistant where I helped with two classes, B1200, B1500. Essentially, these are basic introduction courses to freshman students. And in those courses, especially Wayne State, we leverage Siemens software known as NX. And I got the opportunity to help students with the software NX, not only learning how to use the software, but also how to work within a group on the assembly approach and come to a project. At the end of the semester, we have a capstone presentation, and some of these students present projects like robotic hands, Ferris wheels, even motorized boats, and they demonstrate it by, in front of their parents, friends, peers, faculty, and we have a little competition, and the top three winners get some prizes, which is pretty cool. I also assisted students with B1500. It's a MATLAB engineering coding platform, really good for data and visualization. My experience after Wayne State was working at Henry Ford Hospital for some time because I always thought I was going to work in the medical field. I published a paper with kidney and liver transplant patients. But one day I decided I want to go to the tech industry, and ever since then, I've been really happy here. And lastly, having entrepreneurship goals, I have started my own company with my two friends. It's called Contractory. And really, one of my biggest hobbies is home renovations. And I found a big need of improving that process and workflow. And really, I want to innovate this space and change the standard practice we see today and leverage the cloud technologies we have.
Absolutely incredible, both of you. And, we have so much happening in the learning space, and a lot of it has been touched by what you both are doing. As we go into this conversation, Dora Smith is joining this call as well, and we are so excited because she leads our learning initiatives for the future workforce at Siemens. So, Dora, thank you for also being on the line in this conversation.
Yeah, I'm happy to be here. And, Shannon, I wish you had recruited, some folks that really would achieve more and
Yeah.
pursue more. I think Sophie and Hani, wow, what an amazing background you both have, and both professional, working in the corporate world as well as entrepreneurs. So just love to hear all that you've already achieved in your young careers. We want to start off talk a little bit about your street cred. You spoke a little bit to this, but I want to hear more from you about how you look at credentials, the value of credentials as we think about their place in learning, lifelong learning, and in career development. But maybe we'll start. Shannon and I are active in an organization called the American Society for Engineering Education, and a couple years ago we did a survey with them on really looking at fresh hires, usually within the first maybe 5 to 10 years. What did they feel most or least prepared for? And we looked at that across professional skills, technical skills, and the impact to what you've already spoken a little bit to is maybe internships and co-op experiences. So, Hani, maybe we'll start with you. Can you share a little bit about what you felt you were most or least prepared as you came into internships and then into full-time hire?
For sure. So yeah, as I stated, I started my internship in January 2022. When I did start at Siemens, quite honestly, I was lacking confidence in understanding what the big picture was. At the university level, we truly do understand, button clicks, understanding why the software is used or why we do the things we do. But here at Siemens, things are taken in a much bigger perspective. We're talking about parts that have thousands of parts into an assembly. And essentially, I just lack confidence in understanding the bigger picture and how this business is really benefiting our B2B business model, right? And being in a university perspective, we didn't really target any specific industry or personas per se. And, if I was able to learn more through credentials about an automotive space or aerospace industry, I think that would have helped me leverage much more of my capabilities at Siemens as an intern. But the first couple of months really were just learning about what we target here, how we benefit the companies. But I think with the leverage of credentials, not only will help me boost my confidence, but it will at least help me understand my goals and what I'm achieving to learn. Because at the university level, it's a generic understanding of how can a student get to this company, understanding all industries. But I think credentials can pinpoint what you want to go to in what direction and help you get into that company.
That's a great point, honey. We've heard that feedback that, finding that right mix of learning that addresses the kind of the what and the why and a lot of the context, like the industry context you just mentioned, and then augmenting that with the how, which it seems like you are already well prepared for. How about you, Sophie?
Yeah, I'd say I was most prepared for the technical aspects of my job starting out as an intern and new hire here. Because I have that background in mechanical engineering, I was familiar with softwares, for instance, like NX. Some of the things that I needed assistance and had some help both in the technical marketing department and during my training program in Genesis was more of the soft skill side of things. So I knew how to make a technical presentation, but I hadn't really learned how to make specific topics stand out and the science behind teaching. And I've been learning that along the way in my career, which has been really awesome, both through the help of mentors as well as training programs, both online in Siemens, as well as I was a part of the Genesis program, which is our 5-month training program for new mostly technical hires.
That's great that you're a part of Genesis, Sophie. That
Yeah,
is
yeah.
such a phenomenal program, and I think does that great combination, right, of really teaching the how, but teaching the how in context.
Yeah.
Shannon, any burning questions you have?
I'm curious, Sophie, you mentioned the number of credentials you've earned
Yes.
in your introduction. So can you share a little bit about maybe how those credentials provide credibility and have opened doors for you?
Yeah.
And maybe how that made you stand out as a candidate when you were going and applying for Genesis?
Yeah. Well, even to take a step back, when I look at my internship, funny enough, because of some personal things, I wasn't looking for an internship when I got my first internship here at Siemens Digital Industry Software. They were able to find me through an engineering organization. And I think the main thing that stood out to me, that stood out for me at the time, was the NASA training program that I was a part of, as well as the certifications that I got through that program. And they directly helped me in my technical marketing job. For example, I got certified in project management, which then helped me lead and develop projects in technical marketing. But moving on to Genesis as a whole, for my job, they required some type of technical degree. So that, of course, was very helpful. But my familiar with Siemens software and certifications on it definitely stood out because I would be later teaching those courses. So I would have a leg up in that specific field.
Thank you for sharing that. And Hani, you have also achieved a lot in terms of different credentials, but additionally, you have been one of the first and very strong student ambassadors that I had the privilege of working with. Could you share a little bit about how those different experiences, being an ambassador as well as the credentials you've earned, have played a role in how quickly you've been able to acclimate at Siemens?
For sure. So to start off with, the credentials I currently hold with Siemens is the NX Design Certification. But secondhand, as a technical product manager, understanding how we can be innovative and leverage cloud technologies that's emerging today. I have worked on the AWS Cloud Practitioner certification as well. And that's just to really understand how we can leverage our current software and utilize and innovate the cloud technologies we have with AWS and Azure services. Secondly, the ambassador program was very beneficial to me, to be honest. I've always enjoyed helping students. I was a part of multiple programs, multiple student orgs like Tau Beta Pi and BMES, which is the Biomedical Engineering Society. And then being able to leverage the Siemens Ambassador Program to provide students more opportunities to learn from Siemens and just in general, some of the events I've held. Siemens helped sponsor the capstone presentations, and we got to provide some merch, some prizes. We were able to hold a session with our recruiters here for our students at Wayne State University over Zoom, and we had over 60 students in attendance, which is really great. And there were great questions being asked. And I just think that as a company for Siemens DISW to have the time and to work with students, especially students to host events at their universities, is really beneficial to the students themselves because it helps show that these companies really do care about recruiting these students and really want to empower them to be their greatest and give them all the skills and knowledge they need to apply well and efficiently. So I think the ambassador program is just really a leverage standpoint for students to understand which companies really want to show, kind of give effort to the students and which don't. And I think Siemens has done a great job. And working with you, Shannon, has, I've gotten many great feedback from the students about how these sessions have helped them. And I constantly get message back from Wayne State to give more presentations. And every time I do, I talk to you and I see, hey, Shannon, what can we do for these students? And every single time it's been great. So I think it's a great program. I'm more than happy to keep supporting it, new students or as an employee ambassador. I'll never stop that. I think it's great for the students. But the certifications too, it's just another way to introduce the certifications and credentials to students as the ambassador program. Because a lot of students are busy with their studies and it takes a long time it takes a good amount of effort and energy to just look up companies and what certifications do you have. But having this student ambassador program, I can easily communicate with that with students, maybe provide some food to them, some merch. And then overall, students get a better understanding of what they can do to achieve their goals. And Siemens leverages that program because they can get students to understand their software and empower the future workforce.
I'm
Thank you,
seeing
Hani.
or hearing merch as a consistent theme there.
Can
But
never
Hani,
go
I do
wrong.
want to, yeah, I do want to double down while we're talking about credentials, certification, certificates, and what those recognize certain knowledge, skills, or abilities. You both are talking about, I think even in your intro, Hani, you talked about student competition you're involved with. You got me thinking about really the role of pursuing, badging opportunities, credential opportunities, ambassador networks, really the sense of community maybe it brings to make you feel part of this broader workplace you're going to be a part of. So I guess I just ask either of you to comment on, yeah, really the sense of community and how we can drive more of that to keep people in engineering, to keep them excited about engineering.
I would say also it depends on what type of credential you're doing. Like some of my training programs that was a part of, the NASA one was completely online. It was actually during COVID that I was interested in it. And we were doing the program and you're getting certifications. So we were helping each other when we were going through the different content and learning from each other, which I found really helpful. I've also noticed too, because I have participated in just some online MOOCs, is what I think they're called, the online mini courses by university. And I've always found the most valuable ones are the ones that give you a chance to comment or collaborate as much as possible with other students.
Hey, Sophie, could you
Really?
tell us a little bit about that NASA program that you have been a part of?
So it is called the NASA Space Academy. I was part of there are two programs. The first one is more focused on technical communication and research. So we got a chance to write a research paper about lunar water filtration for to be proposed for one of NASA's upcoming lunar mission. And then the other one was a bit more engineering focused, and that was around sending a payload to Mars. So they both sort of had one more science, one more engineering. And during those, you had the opportunity, if you would like, to learn both more about technical and communication tools. So project management being one. I think thermodynamics was another. But during this, you also had a chance to learn about different softwares. For example, you had the ability to get certified in NX, which was really cool.
Great. Thank you. So everything sounds like these have been fantastic experiences. As new people in the professional world, tell us a little bit about what's different in the corporate world than what you expected, and how have you overcome maybe some of those challenges?
Do you want to take this one first, honey?
Sure, I'll start. The corporate world was honestly gave me a very different perspective on everything I learned at the university level. The corporate world, depending on your company, Siemens is quite large, especially being international. I mean, just the benefits and first off being international, I think is very cool. Got to learn about different cultures, learn about what people do, different holidays. I think that's just a nice benefit. But from the university level, we're always told, hey, you're always going to be working in groups. And in a lot of university classes, you don't really get to pick your groups because you don't get to choose that in industry, which also makes sense. But the way that you work together at Siemens, everyone really holds their own weight. And if one person, is away, we can definitely cover for them. But if they're away for a while, you will start to notice things going slower. And at the university level, in all honesty, sometimes you got like two guys, two girls carrying, and there's some people that slack off. But with high functioning workplaces like Siemens, I it was really shocking to me that everyone really had a place at the company, and it was very fitting to what each individual does, and everyone understands what everyone does. But at the university level, that wasn't really ever portrayed to us per se. And, we always talk about high functioning performers, but to be honest, with my experience at Siemens, everyone seemed high functioning and I was lacking some confidence. And that's why credentials also became important to me. So people actually like knew that I knew what I'm talking about. And I just think overall, it was just a different mindset of how things work with there's some red tapes here and there. There's hierarchy, of course, but at the same time, with this agile principle that we're running, especially in digital manufacturing, it's nice to see that, you know, when I joined Siemens, the first thing they asked me was test this and give us your feedback and be honest. They gave me a week and I came back to them with like 10 pages in a Word document of everything that needs to be fixed. And to me, that like I felt valued as a new employee, especially coming from university level. They actually listened to what I had to say, although I didn't have that much experience. And I think that was really different mindset change to me as well. That you know, future workforce is going to be the future of the company, or companies, depending if you move around. But they really do value the new generation's thoughts and opinions. And I think it's exciting for us to be able to actually see change that we voiced over. If you went to a lot of students right now at a university level, and I'm going to talk about UNC University just because that's my alma mater, a lot of students would tell you when you ask them, hey, you should apply to some internships, they're going to respond with a way that shows that they don't really have confidence in applying. And a lot of students are scared to make that first jump to apply just because they truly don't feel like they are ready for that internship. And I think that's a really big misconception with internships and people thinking to be experts already. That's simply not the case. When I applied to Siemens, I really didn't think I was going to get in because the requirement was computer science and my major was biomedical engineering. But safe to say, these credentials, I think, not only will help build the confidence in students to start applying more, they'll apply earlier and their sophomore, maybe even freshman, sophomore level. But more importantly, the sense of community at the university level, depending on the student, of course, many students, from what I've observed, they like to work in groups. And if these groups and some student organizations can start developing some programs to work on these credentials together, not only are these credential programs enhancing student groups, student organizations, but at the university level, it's giving some type of um, sign to that saying, hey, students, we do care about you. There's these programs, and getting internships these days is hard. It's a hard process. You got to apply to many different internships, and that's okay. But the point is that having the ability to do these certifications along with your peers, maybe center a class around it, or just center a student organization. Hey, we're going to meet once a week. We're going to work on these certifications. I think is truly beneficial to students, and the ability that students can build the confidence and now start applying to internships and kind of change that mindset. I am ready for this internship, and being, I don't know if I'm going to get it. I think is just a big mindset change and going to be very successful for the future workforce.
I'm thinking of the four C's now. We've got credential, building community through competitions, and um, making you confident in the end. So that's great.
Also, just to piggyback off what you're talking about with applying to internships, it is interesting when you look at who applies to internships based on what the requirements are. It, in general, it changes a little bit in demographics. I think for men, normally they apply to any job or internship when they have around 60% of the qualification, versus women tend to apply when there's like 95% of the qualification. So it's something to keep in mind that you don't necessarily have to fit every single qualification as long as you're open to learning.
Yeah, Sophie, that's a great point because even
That's
as you were talking about confidence, honey, I was thinking of what we often talk about in women in engineering, in this space of imposter syndrome, right? And what we can do to really support each other in gaining that confidence and experiencing it. All right. Hey, Shannon, I'm going to turn it over to you to inquire a little bit about what we're learning.
okay. So for learning, at Siemens we have so many learning hours we have to achieve. And I'm curious, how are you spending your time in your first year, 2 years at Siemens in this learning mindset? And as a piece of that, what does growth mindset mean to you in this new world that you're in?
Yeah. So I was a part of Genesis, which actually counted towards all of my learning hours. So I have like 5 months of the year underneath my belt. But outside of that, my job is teaching people, right? So I've been learning about specifically Team Center Active Workspace just in my job day to day. So I've been going through all of our Accelerator Academy courses, as well as customizing and making adjustments to the presentations. And I am also working on the process to adding images for all of our labs. So I'm very intimately familiar more with our software side of things for learning this year.
Thanks. Honey,
Certainly.
any?
So from my perspective, if you ask me today, I would tell you I'm really focusing on learning new AI technologies with these AI bots now, cloud technologies. That's my focus now because it helps me enhance my current job, in terms of what I can and cannot do and kind of propose new strategies to have business growth. But if you ask me when I joined Siemens, I would tell you I'm going to learn the portfolio of Siemens. We have so much software that students have access to as well, such as NX, Teamcenter, uh, Process Simulate, etc. That list can go on and on. But the point is, when I first joined Siemens, I didn't really have a clue about anything else except NX, and in a way that's not really beneficial for me to see how we can build these digital solutions, and understanding our other softwares, which we have all through our Accelerator Academy, was my first step to kind of enhancing my potential at Siemens. And it's really important to note that the mindset for learning is always changing. And, a quote I go by a lot is education/learning is not a destination, it's rather a journey. And that journey is always changing to what you need to learn and what you're interested in learning. And that's just how I've approached my learning at Siemens.
That's sums it up so nicely. I know education is. Could you repeat that one more time?
For sure. Yeah. Education is not a destination, but rather a journey.
Thank
I
you.
love that. Yeah, because, thinking of that journey and where we're headed in the future, we wanted to pick your guys' brains a little bit on future trends in learning and credentialing, the overall landscape. And you just touched, honey, on AI. We just invited a educator to our team meeting yesterday that's done some really interesting AI research and talked a little bit about how students were using AI, how educators were using AI, and a little bit of what they need to learn from how industry's doing it. So AI is certainly a big one, but I'm curious as you look at AI and overall digital transformation, um, any future perspectives you guys have on how you see that really changing how you may learn or get credentialed in the future?
Yeah, I'll start us off. So I am actually, along with some colleagues in America's Growth and Development, which is basically internal learning services, we're looking at different ways that AI can help us make more custom learning content, as well as speeding up the development time of training. So I am actually using, while I'm going through and reworking some of the labs, an AI tool that we found, which has been helping me speed up the process. So both while you're doing credentials and while behind the scenes while we're making it, we've seen that AI has had an impact and will continue to have an impact on the space.
Mhm. For me, AI is certainly a scary topic, and unless you truly understand what's happening behind the scenes, it can bring much uncertainty. And I think AI is a great tool that we need to start learning as a generation of how to leverage to enhance our jobs. I would never come on here and lie. I do think AI will take over some jobs in the future, but I also think it's going to open up a lot more jobs. Just a quick example, not really uh, relational there, but when the typewriter versus computer came out, the computer was a tool to help you enhance your job and be more productive. And I think AI it should be viewed the same way. As engineers, just for that topic, since I am an engineer, there's a lot of manual tasks that we currently do that should be automated. And I think AI can be that tool to automate that tool so we can focus on other things and use what we've learned in university from a theory perspective and see how we can make change, develop new things. But AI should really not be viewed as a risk, but more as a tool to enhance your productivity. And I think that's the big misconception a lot of people see today is it's going to take my job, but more so, we need to change the mindset of, as an engineer, marketer, sales, how can we leverage AI to make our jobs better? And then reduce stress. I mean, a lot of manual tasks that we currently do are stress consuming. Let's just have the AI do that.
I love that. And when I think about it in the learning landscape, the online courses I've taken, in addition to your guys' previous comments about the sense of community that helps, um, using like the AI coaching tools really helped me learn quicker or really solidify the key takeaways from those courses. So that's one way I've seen AI be real effective in learning. And I think to your point, honey, I just actually was reading a new future of jobs report that came out of the World Economic Forum. And yeah, there will be displaced jobs, but I think the stats they used was like 92 million might be displaced. And it's not just for AI, right? It's overall digital
Hmm.
transformation, but 170 million new. So net new, you got about 78 million jobs. So I think the more all of us can continue to upskill, we're going to be in that strong space. So thank you.
One thing too to add on what you were saying, like the AI coach that you were talking about, a lot of the time when that's used, it wouldn't be possible to have a person doing that anyway, 'cause especially when you're talking about massive online courses, there might be 500 people and having sort of that AI tool that you can go to and learn more from, as well as could point you to directions to different resources is really helpful.
So true. So when you're thinking about what the foundation is and how everything is transforming more rapidly, tell us a little bit about your familiarity with micro credentials and AI and how quickly are you seeing as you're evaluating your own learning? Do you see these classes transforming as fast as they need to?
I found them to be a little bit slower than I expected. I think a lot of the times we're still sort of in the research phase. I have seen online tools that have like Dora talked about like AI assistants and things, but I think that at the moment we're still figuring out exactly having an AI tool for learning looks like, as well as wanting to be sure that we're using an AI tool that we're, let's say, an assistant, right? That we're vetting the information that it's providing to the students to make sure the accuracy is there. So it's definitely coming along, but I think it can be pushed more.
You mentioned vetting, Sophie. How do you verify right now whether or not a course that you're evaluating would be something that provides industry recognition or academic recognition in a way that benefits you?
Okay. Well, part of it is who does the course, right? So when you look at degrees, for instance, I got a degree from the University of Michigan. It's a very well-known place. One of the other ones is NASA and Siemens. Again, they are very recognized, which can definitely add to the credibility. It's also taking a look at the content of the course. And this is, of course, more helpful when you might not be taking a very basic class, but you have at least some background on the information. And you can say, oh, is this accurate? Is this helpful? Um, Also, if you're too confused during the course, even if the information is correct, it might not be the right form of learning for you. So there's a lot of different factors that go into once you begin a course or when you're looking at a course, what makes sense for you to pick.
That's really interesting and helpful to hear those different criteria that you look at to evaluate that. And so I'm going to go to Hani and ask him, knowing that, do you think employers currently view credentials in hiring and career advancement, and should they?
That's a great question. My answer to that is I think it's a case by case scenario. I think employers are starting to recognize credentials as being more important. You know, we're looking at the folks at Google, AWS, Azure, when it comes to cloud technologies, those certifications are becoming very important in the industry because companies are now starting to do that SaaS transformation. And those certifications are highly relatively important for that position, hence deeming the certification to be important. And those employers are looking at them. In other companies like Siemens, we have software. We want to ensure that the people that we're hiring understand how to use our software without starting to teach from ground zero, right? So I think credentials are becoming more relevant in the industry. If you asked me this question 5 years ago, I would tell you I think they're very irrelevant. But I think there's been a drastic mindset change in credentials, and I do think more students are working on them. Every time I go back to Wayne State, students are asking me more questions about different certifications, not just Siemens, but other companies as well. And, for me, if I look at a certification that I want to take, the first thing I'm going to look at is the author, who's producing this content for us. And the next thing is the adoption rate. I think these metrics are very important to kind of buy into this credential program. As more credentials are becoming out there today, you can purchase through different marketplaces. I think it's really important that, we see growth and we see that there was some type of committee or approval process that this was looked at from a student perspective, this was looked at from a professor perspective, industry professional perspective, et cetera, because there's so many different components with credentials and they can be very messy and complex, or they can be very straightforward and simple, which can help us students learn. But from a general standpoint today, I do think credentials are becoming very, very important. And I think that's going to keep growing, especially with all the new technologies in this new tech era we're in right now.
It's great to get your guys' perspective on really the quality assurance there. I want to head us into some closing comments because we're going to be coming up on time here shortly. And really want to think about, Hani, you said if you had looked at this 5 years ago, well, let's fast forward 5 years, 5 to 10 years from now. You guys are running major parts of Siemens. You're kind of in your mid-career. Shannon and I would like to come work for your teams. Give us some bold predictions of what you think what the education and professional development landscape might look like in workforce development.
Yeah. Yeah, sure. Well, I would say when it comes to learning, one of the trends that I've been seeing more and more is customized learning content. Both people and the companies that we provide learning for want stuff that is both at least specific to their industry, if not specific to their needs themselves. So along with that, I see the use of AI not only in the learning itself, but in the background, being able to help curriculum architects create that custom learning being very important. Another thing too that I think that we'll start seeing more is either sort of more long-term learning. So instead of just having one credential, maybe having more series of credential and having access to those resources. And it might be prompting you, hey, you haven't practiced this in a while. Just, take this refresher mini series to keep up your skills, because I think we all know, um, right, no matter what skill it is, the initial credential too is almost a jumping off point to learning more and more about that in the future. So I could see learning certifications taking that and say, okay, how can we not only support the person's initial investment of that skill, but throughout their development of a particular skill or knowledge in a software.
That's great. Really kind of creating connection points and pathways. Honey, how about from your perspective?
Certainly. So, I think we don't have to be blinded to the fact that in 10 years, there's going to be a low number of the future workforce, right? I mean, a lot of companies are already stating that the future workforce is not where it needs to be today. There's going to be a lot of deficit in filling positions. So while having the opportunity to go to IMTS, which is the largest manufacturing technology show in North America, learning about machine tool builders, etc., there was a reference to the future workforce, and that was really important to me as that's representing my generation. And the statement was that in by 2033, there's going to be a deficit of 3 million workers in the manufacturing industry. And that has a big impact on supply chain manufacturing, depending on the context of aerospace, automotive, etc. So I think that's just alarming to me, especially since that's my future. And I think there needs to be a major change in the mindset for universities. So in 10 years, I really see that universities are going to start leveraging these credentials and kind of funneling down the content that they learn and now become more areas, now kind of diverge it or converge it to an area of expertise. Because I think right now at university level, we learn a broad range. And, quite honestly, if I look at my academics at Wayne State University to what I do now, I leverage probably about 50% of it. There is, I'm not saying it's wasted education, but I'm saying we can be more productive in what we learn to help us out in the industry. So my perspective in 10 years, if you're to ask me what students are going to start learning, I think they're still going to go to the universities. I think there's still going to be great programs, but now the learning is funneling down to what you really want to learn and what the industry that you want to go into, so that you can be better fit for that space. And I think credentials are going to be really important to this because I think universities, I think we will notice a higher adoption rate for universities to implement these credentials within the courses themselves. For example, my program at my MBA at LSU, one of the classes is, hey, you can do these 10 assignments or you can do this certification. I would hope that most people would pick the certification choice and not just do extra homework, but to each their own. But I think that that's a mechanism that universities can start thinking about. For example, the University of Michigan they just procured a new program working with Siemens, and they released a course about additive manufacturing. And I think it's beneficial because now additive manufacturing, we are seeing deficit of number of workers in that industry. But having these universities adopt these kind of classes to help you understand of the industry you're going to go into and better prepare you to start at a higher success level, I think is very important. That's where I see academics going with credentials.
I think it does speak to where I think we'd like to think about the role of AI in creating a more personalized, customized experience, right? That is bringing in the content you really need to know and helping you go at the pace you can go at, right? Versus being bored or in a class of a topic you already covered quite well in high school. So That's a little bit as we think about maybe where things are headed in the future. We see some great potential.
Just piggyback off of what Hani and Dora were talking about with using a certain amount of your college learning day to day. Even let's say we were talking about like 50%, even if you don't use the knowledge that you learned in university day to day, I often find it's a helpful background and perspective to have. For instance, I majored in mechanical engineering. I am now basically a technical teacher, not specifically focusing on what I've learned either in mechanical engineering or in my technical marketing internship. But I found that those perspectives have been helpful for my role. I can share specific anecdotes about my time, both learning and being on engineering teams, as well as I've been able to use my marketing background now in creating courses. So even if you're not directly doing what you're majoring in, I often find that it's a helpful background to have and a unique perspective in the role that you're in.
I mean, at the end of the day, right, it's hopefully we're all learning how to learn because we're going to continue to do lifelong learning through it.
It's true. Well, this has been a very insightful conversation from you, Sophie and Hani. Thank you so much. Your thoughts on building a pathway toward community, credibility, and credentials that lead to confidence is really critical for all of us as we transform the future workforce. So thank you both for being shining examples of this upskilling mindset. There will be links to any resources mentioned in today's show notes. Thanks again for listening, and keep an eye out for the next episode.
Thanks for joining us for another episode of Engineering the Future Workforce. The show notes include links to any resources mentioned in today's show. If you're enjoying our podcast, please subscribe so you never miss an episode and leave us a 5-star review.